Hi everyone, this is Ruth and welcome back to my channel. This channel is mainly about my home lab where I build different setups, test networking tools, and experiment with infrastructure projects. My main goal with this lab is to practice cybersecurity skills in a real environment. So over time, I'll be building out different systems, security tools, and monitoring platforms. In this video, we're going to build a complete Windows Server lab connected to a pfSense network. By the end of this setup, a client machine from another VLAN will be able to join the domain and log in using Active Directory credentials. Let's start by preparing the network side. We'll create a dedicated VLAN for our Windows Server. Go ahead and open the pfSense web interface. I'm not going to fully repeat the VLAN and firewall configuration process here since that was covered in a previous video, but I'll quickly summarize the main steps. First, we create a new VLAN and assign it as, let's say, VLAN 70. Then we go to Interfaces and then Assignments and add the VLAN interface and after enable it. Next, configure the DHCP server for VLAN 70 so it can automatically assign IP addresses. After that, write firewall rules for this part. We'll simply follow the same approach we used for the other VLANs we configured in the last video. Now that our VLAN is ready, let's move on to creating the Windows Server virtual machine. Switch over to Proxmox and then click on Create VM. And then set the name to VLAN 70-Windows-Server or whatever you want to name for this virtual machine. And then click Next and select your Windows Server ISO. If you don't have the ISO yet, you can download it from the official Microsoft Evaluation Center. You'll also need the Vertio drives ISO from the Fedora project, which provides optimized drivers for virtual machines. Now, let's continue with the setup. Under the OS type, let's choose Microsoft Windows. Check the option to add additional drive for Vertio drivers and attach the Vertio ISO. For storage, set EFI and TPM storage to local-LVM. This is recommended because it provides better performance and flexible storage allocation for virtual machines. For disk size, set it to 60 GB. The minimum requirement is around 32 GB, but 60 gives you enough space for updates and roles. For CPU, set 3 cores. For memory, set to 8 GB of RAM. While Windows servers can run on as little as 2 GB, however, Active Directory performs much better with more memory. Now, in the network settings, set bridge to VMBR1 and for the VLAN, tag it to 70, VLAN 70 that we've just configured earlier. Review everything, then click Finish and start the virtual machine. Now that the VM is ready, let's install Windows Server. Once the VM starts, you'll see the Windows Setup screen. Select your preferred language and keyboard layout. Click Next and Install. Select Windows Server 2025 Standard Evaluation Desktop Experience. If you're using a different ISO, just choose the version that corresponds to what you downloaded. Accept the license terms and continue. Now, when you reach the desk selection screen, you may notice that no disk is detected. That's expected. Click Load Driver, then browse to the Vertio ISO, navigate to AMD64 and then 2K25 and then install the driver. After that, your disk will appear. Select it and continue the installation. This process may take a few minutes, so just wait until it completes. Once finished, set a password for the administrator account. Now that Windows is installed, let's fix the missing drivers and get network connectivity working. After logging in, open the device manager. You'll notice some devices have warning icons, including the network adapter. That's because the drivers are not installed yet. Open File Explorer, go to the Vertio drive, and run the installer. Install all recommended drivers. Once done, open PowerShell and run ipconfig. You should now see an IP address assigned from VLAN 70 via DHCP. Next, let's configure a static IP address for the server. Since this machine will act as a server, it should have a fixed IP address. Open RAN and type in cpa.cpl. Right-click the Ethernet adapter and go to Properties. Then open IPv4 settings. Set the following. For the IP address, let's set to 10.0.70.2. Let's make sure the IP address that we choose is outside our DHCP range. For the subnet mask, let's use a standard /24 subnet. For the default gateway, let's use the VLAN 70 IP address. For the DNS server, let's use 127.0.0.1. We're using this because it points to the local machine. It's also known as a local host. Once we install Active Directory, this server will also run the DNS service. That means it will handle name resolution for the domain, like translating lab.local into an IP address. So instead of sending DNS requests to an external server, the machine will first check itself. This is important because Active Directory relies heavily on DNS to locate services like domain controllers. If we didn't set this correctly, the server might not be able to find its own domain services, which can cause issues with authentication and domain operations. So now let's click OK, then let's verify using ipconfig. Now that the networking is configured, let's rename the server. Open Server Manager, go to Local Server, then click the computer name. Click Change and rename it to DC01 or whatever you want to name your computer. And then click OK and restart the server. Now we're ready to install Active Directory. In Server Manager, click Add Roles and Features. Choose Role-Based Installation, then select your server. Enable Active Directory domain services and proceed with installation. Once installed, click the notification flag and choose Promote the server to a domain controller. When prompted, choose Add a new forest. For the domain name, you can enter lab.local domain name or replace them with your own. After entering the domain name, set your DSRM or Directory Services Restore Mode password, then click Next and continue through the wizard. Click Install and allow the server to restart automatically once the process is complete. Once the server reboots, let's review what was installed. Now we have two important services, Active Directory Domain Services, which manages users and authentication, DNS, which resolves domain names into IP addresses. These work together to allow domain logins across the network. Next, let's configure DNS forwarding. Open Tools, then DNS, and right-click your server and go to Properties, then Forwarders, and add Google DNS servers. This allows the server to resolve external domain names using Google's DNS servers. Even though we set 127.0.0.1 earlier, that only means the server first tries to resolve DNS requests locally or on itself. But since this machine will also run DNS for our domain, the lab.local, it needs a way to reach out the outside internet as well. That's where the DNS forwarder comes in. So when the server receives a request it cannot resolve locally, like a website on the internet, it forwards the request to an external DNS server, in this case, Google's DNS. Now, let's create a user account. Go to Tools again, and then navigate to Active Directory, Users, and Computers. Under your domain, right-click Users, and then go to New, and then User. Now let's fill in the user details. For the name, let's set to John, and for the last name, let's set to Smith. For the username, let's use jsmith01, and after that, let's set a password and require password change at first login. Now let's configure a client machine and connect it to the domain. On your client virtual machine in VLAN 50, open the PowerShell, and first, let's run ipconfig. Let's verify that the client has received a valid IP address, subnet mask, and default gateway for VLAN 50. Next, let's test basic connectivity by pinging the default gateway. Let's ping the gateway IP address. And you may notice that the ping fails or times out. This is expected at this stage. The reason is that the firewall is currently blocking ICMP traffic from the VLAN 50. Now let's switch to our pfSense firewall interface. Let's navigate to firewall and then rules and then opt for. Let's click add to create a new rule. For the action, let's make sure it's set to pass. For the protocol, let's choose ICMP. For the destination, let's choose this firewall or self. For the description, let's allow ping to gateway. And then click save and click apply changes. After saving the rule, we need to make sure it is evaluated before any blocking rules. Let's locate the newly created ICMP allow rule. Let's click it and drag it to the top of the rule list above any block rules. This ensures that the firewall processes that allow rule first. And now let's click save and don't forget to click as well the apply changes. This time, let's go back to our client virtual machine that is assigned to the VLAN 50 and let's run the ping test again. So this time, the ping succeeded, confirming that ICMP traffic is now allowed. Next, we need to allow traffic from VLAN 50 to our domain controller. Let's return to pfSense and then let's add other firewall rules. Before allowing full domain access through the firewall, we need to configure DNS on the client machine. On your client virtual machine in VLAN 50, open the run dialog by pressing Windows key plus R or type run. And then type in cpa.cpl and press enter. This opens the network connections windows. Right-click your active network adapter and select properties. Scroll down and select Internet Protocol version 4 or TCP/IPv4. Then click properties. In the IPv4 settings window, locate the preferred DNS server field. Now let's enter the IP address of our Windows server or the domain controller, which is 10.0.70.2. Then click OK, then close to save the changes. This ensures that the client will use the domain controller for DNS resolution, which is required for Active Directory communication. Now we need to allow traffic from VLAN 50 to our domain controller. Let's return to pfSense. And then let's click add again and let's create another rule. For action, let's set to pass, and for the protocol, let's set for now to any. It's just temporary, just to make sure it works. And for the destination, let's choose the addresses or alias and let's set the IP to 10.0.70.2 and let's click save, then apply changes. And now let's drag it again. It should be above of the block rules. And then let's click save and apply changes. When we run the ping, we are able now to reach the domain controller. Now that connectivity is working, let's join the domain. On the client machine, let's set DNS to 10.0.70.2. Let's open the run and type sysdm.cpl. Click change and select domain. Enter lab.local and let's provide administrator credentials. Then let's restart the machine. Finally, let's log in using our domain user. On the login screen, select other user. Let's log in lab/jsmethod01, which is the user that we created earlier. And then let's enter the password and let's change it when it's prompted. And once logged in, open the PowerShell and run who am I? And we can see here the username that we created. And that's it. Our domain environment is now fully working. We now have a fully working Windows Server Active Directory environment, properly integrated with pfSense and VLAN segmentation. At this point, our setup includes domain services, network segmentation, and controlled access between virtual LANs, just like a real-world enterprise environment. If you found this tutorial helpful, please consider liking the video and subscribing. Thank you for watching.